So one of the first objectives you laid out was to be the best educational institution in the country, and this before NIRF was even conceived, and we've now been ranked 4 years in a row as the #1 institution. Tell us a little bit about the elements that went into making this institution the #1 in the country.
So, as I said, from the point of view of the country, the institution has to play many roles. We have our primary role as educators, producing the leaders of tomorrow. At least the IITs have to do that. Undergraduate, postgraduate, everything. All our research scholars have to man all the important research establishments in the country and the education institutions. Our undergraduates go on to do wonderful things, not just in India but in the world, and so on. And our master students, MTech students who come in here now are the backbone of Indian manufacturing, Indian product development. And then in addition, our faculty working with our students, as I said, directly engage in meeting our growth challenges, whether it's in infrastructure, whether it's in water, whether it's in energy, healthcare, and so on. We are part of so many programs and we are through both with the private industry and with government. And the startups are also beginning to engage in this.
Yes.
So the issue is, if you want to measure how the institutions are performing in this multi-dimensional role, you have to have this kind of metrics that look at all these things. You have to look at how students are performing in terms of their placement, how are they performing in terms of their perception of what the institute is providing them. How is our funded research? How much are we working with industry? How much is industry willing to commit funds? Because that's a great indicator of whether this institute is delivering to industry. You measure in terms of your diversity of your student population, gender diversity, students from other states of the country. Are you very sort of looked at only by the students of your own state? So all these things are measured. NIRF actually is a very parametric type of assessment. And because our strategic plan is also has diced it all out into these things and has measurable objectives that are tracked year after year, it's not too much of a surprise that if we stick to our strategic plan or exceed our strategic plan targets, that we'll end up being somewhere at the very top of the NIRF ranking. Of course, we're very happy to be #1 continuously since it started, but that's really the root cause. Some, rankings sometimes are also done completely on a perception basis, which is a very valid way of doing things too, but it sort of takes into account in a very black box type of approach the impact of all these things. And the only thing about perception-based rankings is that they have a large inertia. They take time to change because it's based on some kind of a simulation of information from the past about what you hear about an institution. So, but this one is sort of based on data that's collected year after year, so it reflects more accurately what's going on right now. So in that sense, the NIRF ranking tells you, if you can go to the NIRF website, in fact, in gory detail, they give you all the metrics and how they calculate it. So you can see exactly why we are #1.
I think the well-roundedness of the ranking paradigm is also an indicator of what the government aspires for institutions like us, in some sense. And there are many targets that you had set from the research point of view and curricular point of view, and one of those was to kind of revamp the undergraduate curriculum to provide pathways for students going in the aspirational directions. That was another long process, that took a few years to enable, but I think we are seeing the fruits of it now,
absolutely.
Right?
One thing we all recognize, and alumni know this very well, that IIT students, they come in ostensibly to do this discipline or that discipline. Very often they end up becoming very different in their careers as they discover new things that excite them, as they discover new opportunities and so on. And we have realized that it doesn't really matter what you excel at later, as long as you're leading the charge somewhere. And so in our curriculum too, we have sort of realized this. I mean, there are some constraints in the IIT system in India. We have to take in students through the JEE. They have to choose some branches. You have to have these. You can't follow the methodology adopted elsewhere where you can just let them come in and decide and so on. But nothing prevents us from making the curriculum as open as possible, allowing people to pivot, allowing people to change direction, and not wait for them to graduate out to do this, which is what was done earlier. So if you look at our curriculum which we revised in this strategic plan, you will find that today the undergraduate student at IIT Madras has a minimum of 40% of the credits are his or her choice, out of which more than half are completely anything they like. You know, somebody could do 20% of their program all in English, you know, in English language and literature, if that's the change they are seeing happening, that they're going to actually go into the humanities, okay? Or somebody could do it in a different discipline with a lot, you know, especially with the kind of multidisciplinary opportunities that now emerge. And in fact, we have institutionalized this, because now we have, as the last count, 7 programs where undergraduates can upgrade to a master's, undergraduate plus master's, by staying just one more year, just taking advantage of all these elective credits. So it's almost, it's a 2-year master's program, but it's sort of neatly coalesced into the undergraduate program. And they can do this in robotics, they can do this in AI, data science, they can do this in computation engineering, they can do this in biomedical engineering, they can do this in tech MBA. So these things are now based on the student's choice, not JEE ranks. And we are going to offer many more of these. So this is a huge change in the undergraduate program from the time, the way it was run in the earlier days, which also made sense in that time, but things have changed. Yeah.
So this discover your passion, students discovering their passion, goes beyond the class, beyond the hostels, and even into the classroom with this flexibility. Some way. I think an integral part of IIT Madras for a long time has been its industry-facing work, the research that faculty do that is more industry-facing, and that has grown significantly in the last few years, hasn't it?
So, you know, one of the things that if you look historically, IIT Madras was probably the first IIT to set up a formal cell, a formal unit to deal with industry.
Yeah.
In fact, it was set up by by one of the German professors here. It was that early, you know, almost end of their stay here, but you know, they didn't wait for us to do it on our own. And that early lead, I think, has always been maintained. If you look at the NIRF parameters, in fact, you will find the biggest gap between IIT Madras and the other IITs will be in the industry-funded projects. This year, I mean, the past year, we did almost 200 crores of industry-funded projects. We do a lot of R&D with industry, particularly automotive, and then we do with, in the power sector, we do in companies in telecom, actually across the board. GE, automotive, GE, aerospace, we do all of this. So this has been one of the hallmarks, and at last count, something like 50% of the engineering faculty are involved with industry directly, more than 50%. So I think this is, and we in fact track this is one of the parameters we track in our strategic plan.
That also in itself has to be world class. I don't know, I mean, institutions having half the faculty.
And we have a very flexible way of working with industry that handles all the IP issues in the different ways to suit different companies and their viewpoints. We have a very fair way of dealing with IP, and that also helps a lot. So we see that, I mean, industry funding taken as a percentage of the overall funds flowing into the institute, if you look at it as a black box, is now at 20%. So it's a huge amount. I don't think many universities in the world.
When you say
this is industry actually putting cash on the
and only the private industry mostly.
Yeah. I mean,
so if you now include mission-oriented government organizations like ISRO, DRDO,
that will be more.
That will be far more.
These are companies under the who are operating as a profit-making enterprise under the maybe government owned or public, majority owned by the government in some cases, but basically they are companies which are responsible to their shareholders.
Sure. So that's remarkable in the sense that all that experience coming from industry projects certainly has to.
Yeah, I think it flows back into the teaching and it flows back into the kind of research that people do.
Yeah.
So.